welcome back. For this video, I thought it would be fun to go through my physical TBR and find the lowest and the highest rated books and read those. I focused on the books that I already owned, so all my physical books and also all of my ebooks as well. I counted them, I think there were 52 books. So I put them all in a list and I checked on Goodreads and I also cross checked with Fable and it was about the same result. However, on Fable, the lowest rated book was different. However, it only had one review, so it didn't feel too accurate there. Because on Goodreads it was rated higher. So I think this is as accurate as I'm gonna get looking at those two. So I'll go ahead and show you what the books were. So my lowest rated book on my TBR was Tomb Sweeping by Alexandra Chang. And this one I actually got recently. Its average rating on Goodreads is a 3.34. I do know that it's a collection of short stories, and I think I got it mainly because I thought the cover art was pretty cool. So yeah, I'm interested to see. I mean, on average, that's not that low of a rating, but I am curious to see, like, will this be just a meh book, or if I'll really like it. There's that one. And then my highest rated book on my list was The Woman by Kristen Hanna. I know a lot of people have read it, but I honestly didn't expect it to be at the very top of my list, so I am very interested to find out what happens in this book. This book I actually got from a library book sale. It was a book someone donated for a fundraiser book sale. I think maybe because of that, it was a book someone didn't want anymore. So I kind of have it in my mind maybe they didn't like it, but maybe they just didn't have the space for it. I don't know. But like I said, I know it was pretty popular, and that's why I got it. Yeah, I'm curious to see how it turns out. Oh, right. I don't think I mentioned this one came in at a 4.59 rating. I pulled it up on Goodreads on my tablet here and I forgot to mention the rating. That was the whole reason I pulled it up. Anyway, I don't know yet how exactly I'm going to do this video. I was thinking a vlog type. Spoiler, not a vlog type, but really I might, check in throughout the book to give my thoughts, either that or I'll wait until the end to, give my reviews then while it's fresh in my head. That'll be interesting though, because I'm gonna be honest, I'm not used to filming videos like this. So there's gonna be some experimenting going on for sure. Figuring out what kind of vlog style I want. Oh, and by the way, this is Professor Waddlemeyer. Thank you. I think I'm done with the intro. Okay, so I finally finished Tomb Sweeping. It took me a bit longer than expected. I think maybe because, it's a collection of short stories, so each story isn't connected, like it would be in a regular book. It's 239 pages. I thought that wouldn't be too bad. Each story was interesting. I liked them a lot. One thing that was unexpected, like although these stories weren't connected, a lot of them had this kind of eeriness to them. You're reading the short story, and then like there's just something about the situation or the characters that just seem off, almost a little creepy in some cases. So I found that really interesting, and I found some common themes. Like there was one just within the first three stories. Like these stories were about women who wanted more out of their lives than what they were getting. Like they had these dreams and aspirations of like what they wanted to do with their lives, but things out of their control happened, keeping them from the life that they wanted. The first story, the girl, she gets laid off from her job. Another story, the woman, gets married and kind of like subconsciously lets go of her dream. And there were also themes of wealth, like wanting wealth. Like a lot of these characters dreamt of being wealthy, and I think like their idea of success was to be wealthy. The kind of person who could afford to shop at a bougie grocery store, and the kind of person who could afford to live in a super expensive house. Things like that. Like it wasn't enough for some of these characters, to have like a family. Like they're starting a family, and you're like, why aren't you happy? And it's like I want more in life. I want to do a good job and earn good money. I don't want to give up who I am for my husband and my children, that kind of thing. Of course, not all the main characters were women either. Like there were some men that we followed in one or two of these stories. So despite the fact that none of the stories were connected in any way to each other, like they were connected through these themes that kept popping up. I also thought that the stories were told in interesting ways. Like I feel like no one story sounds the same. Like it's not written in the same way. Like one of the stories was told backwards. We start at the end of the story, and you begin to realize that her life story is being told backwards. And I thought that was really interesting. There was one story that was written, like different moments had its own subtitle. Yeah, I think like all the stories were told in an interesting way. We really follow, the character. Like it's more character driven. Whoever our main character is, we are in their head. And I find it interesting to try to figure out what kind of person is this character that we're following? Why are they doing what they're doing? I find it really interesting. These short stories, they really make you think, or at least they really made me think about like what does this mean? Why did they do that, or why do they think in this way? Like I find that very interesting, but I will say a lot of the stories did leave me confused. And on the one hand, like I said, it made me, think about the story and the characters. And I personally like when a book makes me think like that. Like you don't necessarily have to completely understand a book right away. Like I said, on one hand, I thought that was a good thing. But on the other hand, I'm not 100% sure if that was the intention. if we were meant to be left a little confused after a lot of these stories. Because it was a lot of them, where, like, the way they ended, I'm like, huh? What just happened? I'm so confused. But yeah, so I mean, overall, like I said, I find the stories very interesting, but also kind of confusing. So I can understand why some people might not like this particular set of short stories. I don't know that it would be everybody's cup of tea. I think my favorite short story out of all of them was the one titled Tomb Sweeping. But there were some other good ones as well. Yeah, overall, I did really enjoy this short story collection. I think my biggest drawback from it was the fact that, like, a lot of the stories left me feeling confused, but that could just be me. I can see that being just me. The dangers of annotating with a pen. So I finally finished The Women by Kristen Hanna, and I think it totally deserved its 4.5-star rating. It was a really good book. Really, from the first page, I was hooked. It's a fairly long book, but we kinda get to that action fairly quickly, like, from that first chapter. So, some context, it's 1966, the Vietnam War is currently going on, and they're having a farewell party to her brother who is going off to war. And, she's sad that they're going to be separated, but then someone at the party tells her that women can be heroes too. And, like, before that, she had never thought of it in that way. And so, like, from the beginning, we kind of get her, you know, hero's call to action from the first chapter. And so, fairly quickly, the plot gets moving. But I don't think it was rushed at all either. And, it was really interesting to see. She has, like, this idealized view of heroes going to war, because of her father. They're a very, like, proud military family. And so she volunteers to be a nurse in the army. But once she gets there to Vietnam, like, even before the airplane landed, the plane's already getting shot at, right? Like, she was not prepared for this. Okay, so part one really looks into how unprepared our main character is, and then how she learns to grow despite all of the challenges that she faces, because, like, she's a really good nurse. It just, in such a crazy environment, like, she needs some time, to get used to it. But when she does, she's amazing, and she finds herself here. Like, she finds her purpose in helping these people, by nursing them back to health, saving their lives, and getting them back home to their families, which is really amazing. All the while, like, she's sticking to her values, like, some of her core beliefs. She's just, like, a really strong character. And then the second half of the books, well, really, even, like, the last part of part one going into part two, she has been to war for 2 years now, and she's finally back home, but she's not getting that warm welcome that she was expecting. Because part of what you'll see in part one, which I thought was really interesting, part of the story is told through letters that she writes to her friends and family back home. And she hears news from back home and how people are protesting, for, like, anti war protests, things like that. And, like, comparing, like, the news that they're getting back home in America versus what is actually happening where she is. And I thought that was a really interesting way to tell not only the story from our main character's point of view, but getting told the political climate of America at the time. even though she's not there. But when she does finally go back home, it's so much worse. Like the tensions have, been building since then. And so she gets back home and like people are spitting at her, calling her a baby killer, and it's just, like it's rough. And so then, part two follows like her struggle to readapt to normal life after the war, and her struggle with PTSD. And at this time she's not even really aware that that's what's going on, and that she's not the only one experiencing this, especially the times when she does go to get help. Nobody believes her because apparently there were no women in the war. And as a reader who's been following her story, and maybe also as a modern reader, because I know times were different back then, but it's so frustrating, nobody believing her and giving her the help that she deserves, throughout the book. And it is so heartbreaking to watch her break apart, and so frustrating that nobody will listen to her and give her the time of day. But it was so well written, and the character was very well written too. Like whatever she felt in the story, I felt too. Like I felt her sadness, her frustration, her shame, and I thought that that was a great mark for a well written character. And I think it did well showing like how she navigated all the different relationships that she has, like with her friends, with her family, with former lovers. It's a struggle. It's a years long struggle, but she finally learned how to pick herself back up after being broken so terribly, by this war. But yeah, I think it was really well done, and I would definitely recommend this book. Especially to learn a little bit of history, and it is fiction, but it's based off history, so I think it's a good doorway into, like, if you're curious enough to look into more of the history. I think it was really well done. Yeah. So that was fun getting to read my lowest and highest rated books on my TBR. It did take me longer to film than I expected. One, because I kind of thought of doing this on a whim. I hadn't already read them, but also I was playing around with camera settings, and the videos that I filmed, the files were too big for me to transfer them properly. So I was trying to figure out how to transfer them, and my phone ran out of space, and it was it was a whole ordeal. But I hopefully have it figured out now, and hopefully I don't run into that problem again. But yeah, it was fun. In the future, if I do another one of these, I kind of hope to maybe be more vlog style. I would I need to do my research first though. I'm kind of figure out how to do it, because I think I kind of tried and failed this time. Let me know also if you thought my reviews were okay, that they made sense. As I finished the book, I kind of gave my thoughts as they were fresh. I feel like it takes me a minute to properly word my thoughts. And so I'm not entirely sure if it all made sense or if it was coherent at all. So please let me know if it was okay. Or any tips you may have would be greatly appreciated. But until then, I'll see you next time.